Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, this is Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another episode of the Financial Freedom Secrets podcast. And I have a new friend with me here today. We've got Charlie Winn from Orchard Coaching. Charlie was introduced to me by my business partner, Jim, and we had a bit of a conversation. We hit it off, and I felt there was a big opportunity here for us to share some of Charlie's wisdom. For those of you who are in service businesses, whether you're scaling an agency, whether you have a high-ticket service business, there is this common trap that many agency owners find themselves in when it comes to growing and scaling their business and try to create more financial freedom and flexibility for themselves and their families. So, Charlie, thanks for joining us, mate. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, Jackson, and thank you for inviting me on the podcast. Appreciate that.
My absolute pleasure, mate. So tell us a little about you and your story, Charlie.
My short version, I suppose, of me, I was inspired probably about 10 years ago to get into coaching sports. And I was working more in the consulting space at that time, and not quite feeling that it was quite working for me on a number of different levels. And the reason I mentioned both of those at the same time is that I realized that the coaching and the approach that coaching takes with businesses, which told me to work with the individuals that you're coaching to grow them and to understand their context, and using mostly a questioning technique to allow them to grow and to understand what they need, was a lot more effective and a lot more in line with me and my personality. And I could see that it was working in a sporting space very, very effectively, but I wasn't getting what I needed from business. So I've combined the two and gone out to businesses and the last few years and focusing a lot, particularly on the leadership side of things, because I think that's really where we can make the biggest difference and biggest changes in how effective businesses can be.
I love that, mate. Fantastic. So why agencies specifically have you specialised in working with, Charlie?
So I've spent about 20 years in and around agencies, mostly working in them, but definitely working as clients to them for a number of large corporates, understanding how they work from a number of different directions. So I suppose that's really what it is. Whether it's I've worked in market research agencies, I've worked with creative agencies, I've worked with advertising agencies. I've been the global director of digital marketing for a large WPP company, so within the agency space as well. So I've come from a number of different angles, and I've set up a working relationship between WPP and Qantas, actually. So there's been a number of different angles and directions that I've come at agency life from, and I understand it quite intently. And I've seen a lot of the challenges in leadership within that space and how developing leaders and bringing them along really makes a huge difference.
It's really interesting, mate. Agencies are a very fascinating beast from my perspective, because I think the typical perception of even other business owners or consumers of an agency, they think that agencies are all about rolling around in an open plan office on a exercise ball and listening to Enya in the background and doing yoga and whiteboarding and creating stuff. But there's a lot more to it. They're quite complicated, particularly as you're growing and scaling a bigger agency. And I suspect there's a lot of leadership challenges. So from your perspective, mate, what are the biggest challenges that agency owners face when it comes to scaling an agency business?
It's usually that, I'll refer to it as management layer. It's that layer, below as such the executives or the ones with the experience that usually go out there and get to the business. And usually what occurs is that they'll bring the business in, they'll create the relationships, and then they'll be wanting that next layer to actually execute that work. That's often what occurs, and there's often a bit of kind of calling it throwing over the fence a little bit across to those managers or those executives, the people that are necessarily doing that work, and not growing those people at the rate that they need to be able to create their own relationships with the clients and understand what the clients need, and to create the space for them to be the best that they can be. So often those key leaders are committing them to things that they don't know how to do, or necessarily they don't know have the skills or the systems in place, and often just saying yes to things and not necessarily creating the leaders and the systems and the processes that are sometimes needed in that space. That's usually a key challenge that I'm seeing. There's not other ones as well, but I suppose it's that enabling of that middle layer, if you will, is probably the key challenge that doesn't occur as much as it should.
And where do those challenges, where are they born from? Is it just because the leaders or those kind of owners of the business have evolved from technicians and maybe managers themselves, so they just don't know any different? Is it a lack of transparency between those layers, or is it something else? Or where does those challenges typically originate from?
It typically originates is that I think a lot of people that start up agencies have this wonderful idea of being able to, I can do it better than the previous agency that I was in, and off they'll go and they'll do it, and they would have been doing a lot of that grunt work themselves. So they go into the news agency, they create their own new agency, but they haven't realised that when they actually scale to a level where they need to get that management layer or the executives to actually be doing the work, is that they haven't enabled them or created that space for them to be the best that they can be. And you kind of touched on a little earlier, it is around ensuring that we can develop those people and allow the key owners to actually have to push past their ego, which is sometimes when they want to be on that front foot, talking to the clients and owning that relationship, as opposed to necessarily being able to pull back and having that the lack of ego, I suppose, ultimately to allow that middle layer to actually own the relationship and to understand it more fully. So that's really one of those key spaces there.
It's really interesting, mate. And I'll speak from my experience working with agency owners around particularly building wealth. And I've found that in my experience, typically work with two types of agency owners. Those who want to create a lifestyle business where they're happy to do some of the client relationship management, they're happy being the hero to the story, but they want that flexibility. And they feel that scaling up is going to just create a job and golden handcuffs for them. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I see agency owners who've been battling and grunting away at it for a very long time, and they really want to kind of skip the leadership layer and become kind of investors and advisors. And I've seen many of them have a very laissez-faire approach to their business where they just go completely hands off and they just expect that the business has the operational infrastructure in place that's going to support their absence. And we know exactly what happens in those situations, right?
Yes.
It's really interesting. And I guess the summary I get from that is that there's a lot of agency owners who don't necessarily want to step into that leadership role. Is that your observation as well, Charlie?
Yes, is the short answer. I think and there's two types, I think, within two types of people within that. One is that they either, and I'll use the word fear, they actually are unsure or they're scared of stepping into there because that they either haven't seen role models or they're just not sure how to do it, and they feel a bit scared, or ultimately they don't know how to. There's a couple of spaces there. Either they think they've got so much other work and they've got to be doing the work for the clients, or necessarily that they just don't know how to create this time and space for them to work on the business as such.
Sure.
And working on the business is ultimately developing those leaders and spending that time to actually grow those individuals that they need to be able to fill in that space or that vacuum that if they're spending time on the business or more with developing the business itself.
Makes a lot of sense because I suspect a lot of these agency owners just think they can hire themselves out of problems. They can get a general manager or an operations manager or a head creative or account lead or whatever it might be. They overlook the fact that they need to grow to be able to mentor those people because their business is unique, their agency is unique. Yes. And I suspect that's where a lot of these people end up taking you up for your services, right?
Yes. So I bring what I call a strengths-based coaching approach, which is ultimately believing that those leaders, the key leaders, have actually what they need. They just don't know how to necessarily bring it out or have the right skills to either create the space or to develop the overarching structures that's needed for the right people to make the right decisions at the right time in the agency. And that's that last kind of statement is is how we know that everyone in the agency is going to impact on the profitability and the productivity of an agency. So how do we make sure the right decisions are made at the right level, by the right people at the right time? And that's ultimately, if we can get those structures in place, and we're also creating the confidence for those people to make those decisions, then we are going to be able to create an amazingly scalable agency at that point. So that's really the nirvana, if you will, that I'm heading for with working with agency owners is, well, what does that amazing vision look like where the right people make the right decisions at the right time in your agency to allow for it to create sustainable growth of that agency itself. And to do that, you need to bring your clients along with that and make sure that they are interacting at the right levels within the agency and getting the right time with the right people.
Makes sense, yeah. And where do you see these owners failing the most when it comes to leadership, Charlie, particularly in this world that we're in? Because I feel that after COVID, particularly when we're in service businesses, our employees have really changed the way that they look at value and how they want to live their lives. There's been a fundamental shift of power because we're at full employment and finding good people is really tough. So where do you see agency owners going wrong?
So leadership is not, we sometimes look at leadership as this kind of big, unusual blob of stuff that someone does that creates this amazing outcome. But ultimately, if you start to break it down, we need to lead in a few different areas when we're leading agencies. One is we need to lead ourselves, and we need to start there. However, we also know we need to lead the business itself. And when we're leading the business, we're not just leading, all the employees, but we're leading our clients as well. We're creating that leadership. We're saying we need to go in this direction with your account, or these are the strategic elements we need to be putting in place. But it's ultimately taking that leadership and having that confidence of the business, but creating those decisions as well on which direction to take that business. And then you've got to lead your team. And the thing is that all three of those elements, leading yourself, leading the business, leading your team, they might have different expectations that you might place on yourself, but also that the business needs now. So a really small agency will need a visionary leader at the beginning. But as it then grows, you're then going to shift from a visionary leader to much more of a pace setting, as in these are the expectations and the standards that we expect. And then the team, depending on its maturity and its experience and how you develop it, is going to need a slightly different leadership approach. And we also have biases in the way we lead. We naturally have particular ways that we lead, usually based on the individual we've seen lead in the past and just applying that. But is that what the business needs now? And is that what your team needs now? So what I'll do is I'll usually work with leaders to say, well, what is your authentic leadership self? And get them to understand that and understand maybe there's quite a few strengths, but also some gaps in there. And then we'll compare it and go, well, what does your business need now? And what does your team need now? And what we'll probably do is understand, there's some great strengths that you can leverage and develop on those. But we'll also say, okay, there's a couple of things missing there. And either you, as a leader, realize, okay, I can shift my leadership style as needed for the business or the team. Or you might go, actually, I need another leader alongside me. Or I need to bring in someone to help me leading the business or leading the team in a slightly different direction as they need, rather than what I need or my bias that I have. That was a slightly long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps. It
definitely makes a lot of sense, mate. We've been on the same journey. Like, we've got now a team of 32, I think, and I know that I'm a visionary leader. I'm the dreamer. I like to come up with all the ideas. I'm not that strong in terms of the execution and the follow through. I get everything to first draft, and my business partner, the founder of Aureus, Sam, he's very operational. He's got high follow through. He hates doing new stuff. Like, he could do the same thing forever. So I've got to kind of drag him kicking and screaming with new ideas, but then he kind of cleans up my mess. And even with adding, we've got 3 other partners now. We've got Ben, we've got Jim, we've got Chad. We've got complementary skill sets. And I think what's really interesting, and this is something that I've observed, is that you need to bring in people who complement your skill sets, who aren't a carbon copy of yourself. Yes. There's no point having an exact replica of yourself in your business. It doesn't add any value. You're all just strong at the same things and weak at the same things. So it doesn't necessarily move that needle forwards. Do you see that as a common trap in agencies? Because I've seen that there's lots of creatives who they might align from a value standpoint, but they share very much the same strengths and weaknesses.
You put it really succinctly and well there, Jackson. So often we as individuals, we love to have people like us around us because I suppose we understand us, the similar type of personalities, but we then get that very convergent point of view and we're not being challenged in the way we think, or as you pointed out in your example, that we're not actually getting you're bringing the visionary style to your business, and your business partner is then following through and bringing that to life.
Yes,
you're both providing that value to each other, and you're both getting those benefits, and you're growing more than just 1 + 1. You're getting an exponential amount of value by having that relationship, and the awareness of the strengths of each other means that you're quite clear on the way that you're probably going to lead, and when you may actually take more of a being at the front, leading from the front as such. You might step back when it's much more the operational style, whereas maybe when the business planning yearly, annual, or whatever cycle you utilize, or with those clients, you'll then step in there, but you'll probably bounce it off him.
Yes,
or the whole team, leadership team, that is, saying, well, this is where I think we're going. You'll get the buy-in, hopefully, and then off you'll go. So, but they might come back and go, Jackson, are you crazy to kind of head in that?
Quite often.
Yeah. So you'll then temper that back and respect their points of view and the diversity of thinking, which is ultimately what we're, by creating I call it an inner circle. I make sure owners have an inner circle that has a diverse point of view and has a diverse the ability to also hold that owner to account and to challenge them and to make them think. Because if that doesn't occur, you're just going to be going off on these tangents that are not really good for the business or ultimately, and therefore ultimately in the end, good for the owner.
And look, that's a really dangerous position to be in, right? Where you're surrounded by yes men and women who are just appeasing you. And I think this comes back to that ego piece, right? One of the biggest and most powerful rules that we implemented is doing the right thing as opposed to being right. And having that challenging perspective, even though it might be frustrating at face value, you go, hey, maybe I didn't think about it from that perspective. That's a better idea. Let's go with that. And that's where businesses really grow and scale. And you can create a lot of wealth doing that because we're building an asset as opposed to it being the kind of the Jackson show or the Charlie show, right?
Exactly right, yes.
A really good segue, mate. We talk a lot to our clients about building a business that has a value that can be sold. And you've had a lot more experience working with agencies than we have. In your conversations, how many agency owners ultimately want to build a saleable asset, or how many are just doing it as a goodwill cash flow business and have no real intention to sell that business?
I probably have the ones that I've come across, and usually they are a little more, I expect, ambitious because they've actually come to me. So I'm seeing, 60% wanting to build and probably sell, or at least create a sustainable agency, a sustainably growing agency, I should say. And when I say sustainable, that's from a people, profit, and planet perspective. So with profit, you've really, particularly early on, that's got to be a key focus. It should never not be a focus, but depending on how you balance it against the other key areas of people and planet as well. But I'm seeing more than half wanting to head in that direction. So to create an asset that is saleable, but it will definitely creating an ongoing revenue stream for the owners.
Yes, I love that, because I think the best asset that you've got is your business. There's no other asset that you can be so actively involved and influence the outcome. And in Australia, particularly, we've got amazing tax rules around selling a business that are unprecedented anywhere else. So, mate, in your experience, what are the keys to building a valuable agency, something that you can exit from and get the best bang for buck?
I think that the main thing is around that ability to scale and creating those systems that allow you to bring that niche, or agencies that are looking to actually to scale and and create that value that you're talking about. They would need to focus in on a particular niche and really bring that to life and create the systems in behind that mean that you can scale with those clients, those amazing clients that really want to grow with you and align with you. So I think that's the main thing is the one is understanding your niche to the extent where you will be able to grow exponentially, and to be able to create the systems in behind there to allow that to occur. Now, we haven't talked about the people in that, but ultimately you need to also create the people to have the engagement, sometimes not quite the word I like to use, but they are totally in line with the direction that you're heading with, that they understand those clients and they want to grow. So the autonomy, the mastery, and the purpose need to be aligned for all those individuals as well. And if we can get all that right, then you will create an asset that is extremely valuable, and therefore will bring those potential buyers, coming to you, which is what you want. You want to attract them to you. You don't necessarily want to be chasing them yourself, because you're not going to be in the strongest negotiating position if that occurs.
Makes a lot of sense, mate. And I think this is what we need to start thinking about in these businesses, whether it be an agency or any others. Like, what is a buyer looking for? And how do you become highly sought after for having an asset that people desire, as opposed to, and to be blunt, many agencies are generalist agencies. They're a jack of all trades. They do everything, and they don't necessarily do everything great or known for any one particular thing. And for that reason, there's risk in their clients and there's risk in their team. So, of course, a potential buyer is going to ask you for an earnout and want you to hang around and manage that retention, because you could walk away and all of the clients and all of the team walk away as well. And what are they left with? And that's not really an asset. That is very much a traditional practice or agency, right? As opposed to a kind of sustainable and scalable product. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about 2023, Matt. I think we've had an interesting year this year. But I feel that 2023 is going to come with a lot of challenges. I personally think that we're going to find ourselves in a recession, but recessions are great for businesses like agencies, because agencies are the external mechanism where many businesses can reinvent and can reimagine and can have speed to implementing certain things that they otherwise couldn't do internally. So in 2023, where do you see the biggest opportunities for agencies to grow and achieve their goals?
I think it's that in that whole point you just talked about, which is that they need to be able to understand their point of difference, and they need to be able to really understand those clients or the types of clients they're working with, their niche, to the extent that they are providing that extra value that you're referring to, and it's how they can leverage and build that. So, if we were to go into recession, is that they become that partner which they can't do without, because if there's a recession and the end clients the agencies are working with are under that financial pressure for whatever reason, but we'll see more of them in a recession, is that you want to be that partner that they just don't want to, or they can't actually afford to get rid of. And if they can't afford to get rid of you, because if they do, they're actually going to lose value. That's then how you can then grow and actually demonstrate that value, become indispensable. So,
beautiful.
And to do that, it is getting into that niche and understanding them to that extent, rather than necessarily being that generalist style that you were talking about.
Yes, it makes so much sense. Even my own frustrations working with agencies is where they report vanity metrics that mean absolutely nothing to my business. Like, show me how you're a profit driver, which for some agencies might be more challenging than others. But if you can quantify the success that you're able to deliver as a result of your service offering to your clients, then you become a non-negotiable to their business, as opposed to a nice to have only when cash flow is free flowing. Exactly. And I think that's going to be separate the good agencies from the great ones. So I'm interested to see how that pans out, mate. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunities for you on the horizon in that space. So, mate, let's try and summarize this in terms of some kind of actionable takeaways. So, mate, in the vast array of your experience, what are the top 3 things that agency owners can take out of this podcast to go and implement and prioritize to move the needle forwards, if you had to summarize the top 3?
Well, I think number one, which we just talked about, is having a point of difference, which in my mind is ultimately starting with who are those amazing clients that you love working with, and focus on that niche and develop those clients out, and get rid of those ones that take up, that you get upset, or you look at they're calling you like, I just don't want to talk to you right now, as opposed to those that you really want to talk to, and develop those ones out. So that point of difference, which if I was to work with them, I'd focus on, well, what are your strengths as an individual and as a business, and make sure that they're aligned, the point of difference against your strengths, so that you're working in the space that you love working in. So that's probably number one. Number two, I think, is more around the sustainability, the people, planet, profit element of a business. Sometimes I think businesses try to move so fast, or try to be everything to everyone, which we've already kind of mentioned, and you're just that hamster on that wheel, just going and burning yourself out, and not either spending the time working on the business. Not enough time spent working on the business. And the third one, I think, is around leadership, and it's kind of understanding what is the leadership structures that you need in place for the right people to be making the right decisions at the right time in your business, and knowing that you can't be, as the owner, that person that makes all those decisions, or create a space where people think that they can, that you're the only ones that can make most decisions. So it's creating that space to do that, which usually is going through that discovery of understanding your authentic leadership self, understanding what your business needs now, what your team needs now. That's beautiful. Probably the three in summary.
Great advice, mate. It's fantastic. So, mate, if somebody listened to this and maybe they're interested in having a conversation, who is an ideal client for you, Charlie?
So the ideal clients for me are agencies. They're usually around 15 to 25 employees, and they're usually then having that challenge of moving from being what I call owner-centric, which is where the owner is, everyone reports to the owner, the owner's kind of made all the decisions, moving from that to, I call it an enterprise model, which is when they actually have a leadership team and they actually have that management layer in place. That transition is a significant, challenging period for agencies the world over, and it's that transition period that I specialize in. So they're ultimately the ones, 15 to 25 employees, that are realizing that they need to review their leadership structures and engage the whole organization in a way that's going to work for the business to scale in the future, sustainably.
Beautiful. Perfect. Fantastic. And if they want to get in touch with you, mate, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
To LinkedIn, direct message, or my website, orchardcoaching.com, and my contact details on either of those.
Perfect, mate. We'll include all those links in the show notes for you. Mate, this has been fantastic. I think this is definitely going to be the new age of agencies, for those that need to evolve and grow to that next level, or they're going to get left behind. So, guys, if you've heard anything in this podcast that's resonated with you, you'd like to have a chat with Charlie, feel free to reach out. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the podcast. And Charlie, thanks for making the time, and look forward to catching up again soon.
No problem, Jackson. Really appreciate the time. It's a great chat, as always. Thank you.
My pleasure, mate.
Cheers.